So last week on this channel I made a video spotlighting how amazing the Sega Saturn is. I even made a strong yet biased case pointing towards the Sega Saturn's gaming library being superior to that of the Nintendo 64. Basically throughout the video I took various gaming genres across both platforms and made decisions on which system presented the best games in each category. Within this analysis, one specific point I made seemed to trigger a few people within my comment section. And that was the way in which I presented my opinion on space shooters across the platforms. Some people appeared to show anger and resentment towards me for praising the Sega Saturn's magnificent shoot-em-ups, yet failing to mention any shooters on the 64. It looks like one particular comment I made really got under people's skins, and that was when I said, to my knowledge, there aren't any good shoot-em-ups on the 64. This led to a few idiots telling me that I was wrong and that I had done poor research for said video in question, when in all actualities I achieved everything I wanted from my video. I cannot have been wrong about 64 space shooters last week if I used the line, to my knowledge, for example. As to my knowledge, this time last week, I didn't know of any space shooters for the platform, so I was simply stating a fact. Further to this, I didn't conduct poor research either, because I didn't do any research. The entire video was an opinion piece, based on my life experiences with the platforms, which I made a point of stating time and time again throughout the video. However, ranting aside, one of the best things about making opinion piece videos is that it gives my viewers the opportunity to bring many interesting facts and opinions to my comment section of the video too. Not only does this increase engagement, resulting in me making more money, but I actually get other benefits from the comments too, such as getting to learn about games I never even knew existed. Like if I truly knew everything about every single game that ever existed, like some ignoramuses online seem to expect from me, then why would I even be online talking about gaming in the first place, you fools? There would be no point of any of us discussing anything if we already knew everything. So I learn as much from my comment section as they learn from me. So, sorry to disappoint you, ladies and gentlemen. I am on the same path to discovery in life as all of you. So expecting me to be this all-knowing gaming deity who has played every single game that has ever been made is just plain stupid and absurd. Anyway, moving on to the girth of the video, today I'm going to be talking about the often forgotten space shooters for the Nintendo 64. Yeah! Education, education, education. Gaming isn't about the latest consoles. It is a lifelong reflective process, so thank you to the people who politely brought these games to my attention. Let's start off by talking about Star Soldier Vanishing Earth. This seems to be the game people seem to be most upset about me not talking about in the previous video. So one would think this game must be amazing, and up there with Radiant Silvergun and Darius Gaiden. However, in all actualities, this does not seem to be the case. It is easy to see why I had failed to have ever heard of this one, since the game has never even seen a European release, and most reviews for the game in the States seem to be around the 4 out of 10 mark, so this isn't exactly an essential import title. The fact that this saw an American release also explains why so many people in my comment section had heard of it, and I had not. The majority of great Saturn shooters have beautiful 2D art styles. Star Soldier Vanishing Earth, on the other hand, features ugly polygon graphics. Yuck! The game looks like most polygon games of the era, in fact. It is a shame really they chose to go for such an uninspiring art style when all the gameplay of the game is in 2D anyway. Within this vertical shooter, you get to choose from a few ships and use a selection of generic power-ups which you obtain through killing enemies. Like in most shooters, these amplify the range and destructive force of the weapon you use. There is also an option to use a screen nuke like power-up too, if you fancy wiping out everything on the map, Hiroshima style. The music and sound effects throughout the game were okay too, but nothing overly inspiring. I suppose overall Star Soldier Vanishing Earth isn't that bad, but it isn't really a game that sets the world on fire either. I'd personally stick with most of the shooters on the Saturn any day of the week. Dezaemon 3D, however it's bloody pronounced, is another ugly polygon game. The Nintendo 64 must have been on a proper strong offensive to end beautiful 2D gaming. Amusingly, there is also a Dezaemon 2 game, which is available for the Saturn, which thankfully opted for a traditional 2D art style instead. Yeah! Anyway, the concept of Dezaemon 3D is interesting and fairly ambitious. It is pretty much the space shoot 'em up equivalent to Mario Maker. Dezaemon is a level editor title, which allows you to create space shooter levels of your very own. The game features an extensive graphical menu system where players can create their own levels, cutscenes, polygon models, backgrounds, textures, enemy AI, and even compose their own music. Whilst the menus are all in English, the tutorial and manuals are both in Japanese, which means you'll have to invest quite some time to figure it all out. But if you've always dreamt of making your own space shooter, this is certainly your best chance. Personally though, this is all way too much effort for me personally, so instead I opted to play through the few ready-made levels the game offers instead. There are 2 main sample games and a 3rd game which can apparently be unlocked. Overall, this is certainly an interesting concept for a game, and to my knowledge was actually received with critical acclaim over in Japan. It's a shame we didn't get this one ourselves really. Next up, let us look at Asteroids Hyper 64. This is a game I actually knew about before I uploaded my previous video. I just didn't feel it was really a title which was worth mentioning. In fact, this point stands for this video and the next game I am to feature within this video too. Personally, I find everything about this game offensive. Like, how in the bloody hell do you remake a 1970s arcade game and make it even bloody uglier than it was before? Amusingly, this is pretty much just the 1979 game and doesn't really bring anything new to the table whatsoever. Personally, I would have been super angry if I paid full retail price for this game and got something so drastically simplistic and uninspiring. Stick with the 1979 version of Asteroids, at least it's iconic. Next up, and in a similar vein, we have Space Invaders. Like Asteroids, this is a reimagining of the 1976 arcade game. It plays in much of the same way as the original and features the trademark Nintendo 64 ugly polygon graphics too. Personally, I prefer this game to Asteroids Hyper 64, however I still think the game is a bit of a corporate cash-in and brings little in the way of anything new to the table. The game just feels too small to belong on the 64, even for the Nintendo 64's pathetic cartridge capacity. I suppose on the bright side, the music is decentish, and the boss fights are a nice change of pace too. The world certainly never got to experience that back in 1976. Next up, we have the mouthful of a game, Bakuretsu, Muteki, Bangaioh? Oh, bloody pronunciations. Anyway, this game was made by Treasure, the same people who brought us the likes of Radiant Silvergun and Guardian Heroes on the glorious Saturn. This development team never appears to miss a beat when it comes to quality games, and this Japanese exclusive is no exception to the rule either. Also, I'd like to point out that this one is in marvellous 2D, so thankfully we do not have to suffer through any ugly polygons this time. This unique multi-directional shooter only saw a limited release of 10,000 units overall, making the game pretty scarce. In fact, I made sure to grab a complete inbox copy of this game on eBay before publishing this video, just in case this video gets more views than there are copies of this game in existence, which to be fair is highly likely. If you do not fancy hunting down a rare Nintendo 64 copy of this game, there is also a much more common Dreamcast version available too, which saw releases in all regions. Although be warned, this version of the game varies drastically from that of the 64 counterpart. There are 44 stages within this game, most of which are fairly short, but others that take slightly longer to finish. Some are fairly open and straightforward, whilst others are tiny mazes, requiring you hunt down switches to destroy roadblocks. The tiny sprites and large stages emulate the feeling of early 80s computer games, and in some ways the game kinda reminds me of a reimagining of the 1980s Sinclair ZX Spectrum game Jetpack, which interestingly can also be played as an Easter egg within Donkey Kong 64. So it is an amusing coincidence that both this game and the original Jetpack can both be played on the Nintendo 64. How peculiar. Overall, this is an extremely fun, unique game, which features a drastic change of pace from the usual generic conventions of the majority of titles within the N64's library. So thank you, Treasure, for presenting us with a game that deviated from the usual polygon hyperbole of the period. In regards to my previous video, I still stand by my point that the Saturn features the better space shoot 'em ups than that of the Nintendo 64. And if I had specifically stated that Nintendo didn't have any 2D side-scrolling shoot 'em ups, I would have been right in that case too. However, it was still amusing to look at all the slightly ropey polygon shooters on the Nintendo 64. On the whole, these games are mostly forgettable and in general a bit lackluster. I certainly do not feel any remorse in regards to failing to mention them in my previous video, especially Star Soldier Vanishing Earth. You people must be on crack if you think that game measures up to Saturn shoot 'em ups. Despite all of this though, I am proud and happy to have added Bakuretsu, Muteki, Bangaioh to my collection, as it is so drastically different to the usual presentation of 64 titles. This one may not be a traditional shoot 'em up, but at least we get to escape the usual polygon hell in this unusual multi-directional shooter. Adding games like this to my collection is one of the highlights of content creating for me, and it is always great fun to explore the dustiest corners of gaming platforms' libraries. Sometimes you even get to find treasure. Yeah! Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. What other Japanese exclusive Nintendo 64 games do you think I should add to my collection? What are your favourite shoot 'em ups across all platforms? Let's have a nice grown-up discussion within my comment section. Who knows, I may even bless you with a reply from myself. Shoutouts to Shizuka Kabayashi, Brad Warren, Retail Archaeology, Andrew Bizansky, Pizzadorn, Edward O'Reilly, Atanus Garcia and all of my other patrons. Thank you for all of your support. Yeah! If you want to be added to this prestigious list, then check out my Patreon page. Ta-ta and farewell.